Jessica, I want to follow up with a couple of questions. I mean, you have in your portfolio fashion brands in this sector, and I really like the part where you talked about going in early and talking about this stuff, not postponing it, not like starting a business and like, okay, sustainability, we'll deal with it later when we have time or money. Can you talk about how this is, how do you do this and how is this received from your companies? Are they welcoming this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was probably one of our biggest surprises when we built the whole framework. I thought, okay, I'm going to need to sell this to the companies. Are they going to understand that this is really important for their future and also their financial future? But actually, they were really ready for it, and if anything, wanted help, I think, and support to sort of understand the whole context, which is why we sort of really tried to simplify and narrow it down. But essentially, I think entrepreneurs of today understand and I think want to build businesses that are going to stand the test of time, and without having sustainability at the core, businesses won't stand the test of time. Essentially, what we do have though is, especially on the fashion brand side, we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are very focused on the sustainability aspects of the clothes that they produce. But it's hard sometimes for them to understand that they need to do sort of all of the backbone across the business, not just, okay, choosing the right fiber, having a code of conduct for their supplier, but actually it needs to run across the whole business, whether it's their board, whether it's their hiring practices, whether it's the design process. As a company, they need to cover all of those things, not just the production process. So that's the part where it's like, okay, yes, you're fantastic in that area, but we need to make sure that you have a holistic approach to sustainability as the impact you have as a business, not just as a brand and the clothes that you put out.
I brought you guys on, to me as a moderator, perhaps the most challenging panel today, because you all represent different parts of the industry, but that's kind of the whole point here. We want to talk about how to collaborate across industries. Elin and Thomas, you represent the fashion side, and I want to start there with you, Elin. With your work with Brixton Textiles, can you give a sense of the work that you do and kind of the opportunities and challenges with your ambition of being as sustainable fashion brand as you can be? Can you talk about the work that you give us an intro?
Absolutely. Well, we've been working with sustainability for the last 7 years. That's when we started to make the transformation, so to speak. And just like you said, Jessica, we have been focusing on the product and the production, code of conduct, choosing the right materials and fibers, and evolving step by step. Since we are a pretty small business with limited resources in not only funds, but also in manpower and time, we could only take it small steps at a time. But we needed to start somewhere, so that's where we started. And over these years, we've been growing and growing and growing. And this upcoming collection that comes out this autumn, we have 85% of the collection made from sustainably sourced materials, which is a great milestone for us. But as you said, Jessica, we really need to get a bigger scope of the business in total, and that's where we find ourselves being limited by our own resources. How we're going to find the time and money to get all of this other information and make that transformation when there's so few of us. And yeah, I would say that that's where we are right now.
You mentioned sourcing of textiles is always a big part of your job. Can you let us inside the kind of day-to-day business of finding and sourcing materials, finding factories? How do you assess the suppliers that you use?
Well, we've been working with many different fabric mills, fabric suppliers, fabric or material agents for many years, so we have a long relationship with them and they know us as a brand. So connecting with them and they will know exactly what our demands are in terms of sustainability, but also durability, because Bristol Textiles is an outerwear brand in majority. So in that case, that helps us a lot, long-term relationships. But looking at new types of fibers, that is a bit more tricky due to the high MOQs, the minimum quantities that we can place an order of, especially if you look outside of the EU. The minimums are really, really high, and if to get a lower minimum, we have to raise the price, which will affect the end price for our end customers, and yeah, you can see the difficulties with that. But we also, to source new fibers, we also talk amongst our colleagues in the industry, and we take part in initiatives and groups and workshops. Most recently, there's an initiative called the Nordic Textile Collaboration, which is the environmental departments from Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland, and we're all talking together from different sides of different industries, which is very interesting and hopefully will lead to more transparency and exchange of information and knowledge, I would say.
Very interesting. I want to circle back to that, but I want to bring you in, Thomas. As you have long experience working as a designer and creative director with some of the leading brands in the Nordics, and I'll let you introduce what brands you have worked with. From a kind of designer's perspective and sourcing new innovations, what does your process look like? What are you looking for when you're looking for new innovative materials?
Is this working?
It's working.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, I have been around since before the Berlin Wall was still existing. So I'm still around, sort of. No, but in fact, I have the privilege to work with a lot of Scandinavian brands, the major one. Everything from Marco Polo, Dobber, Tiger of Sweden, Peak Performance, Fjällreven, Oscar Jacobsson, and a lot of these brands. And I run my own brand in the 90s as well. In fact, I've had Erja Häkkinen as an agent here. You maybe know her, but Mika Häkkinen's wife. Okay, anyway. No, but the thing I look into, and especially within the Phoenix Group, who's Fjällreven, has working a lot with sustainability. And I consider it from a designer's perspective, we need to understand the whole process. I mean, for me, it's the yarn. It's like, I compare sometimes to the food industry. We see fashionable chefs out there, and they claim they want to buy the chicken from parts of France. I can agree with that. I'm foodie as well. I started this business as size 46, and I'm 52 now, so you see what he's heading. But I like the idea to understand the complexity. And the problem is the supply chain, as you say, is that everybody say they push it forward. The brand expects the fabric supplier to be sustainable, but keep the price level. And the fabric guys go to the yarn supplier. Yeah, I need a certification. I need everything, but I can't pay more than I do today. And that creates a very odd situation, I would say. The problem is that we are blind. We still have an idea of volume drives profit, like T-Ford back in the days when they do a lot of. And I think we need to evaluate that, because we can see, as Mauro presented earlier, all the leftover, the way of I think the design process needs to be more precise, more evaluated. And we need to understand long perspective. In the supply chain, we know the problem with yarn, minimums, etc. But let's not talk about next season. Let's talk about 4 or 5 years from now. To see, and it may look as a limitation, but I love the idea of using creativity. We are still in the creative way. So I can give an example. I did a project now for an American brand. Unfortunately, I can't say it because it's still under the radar. But the idea was there, post-COVID, how can we do something efficient, sustainable, that is scalable as well? Because that is, of course, I love the idea of initiative on a certain level, but it has to matter on the bigger level, need to scale. And one thing we can do, for example, is limit the number of fabrics we're using in collection. For example, I used one fabric for an overshirt in wool, and I decided to use the same fabric as lining in another jacket. And a buyer will say, no, Thomas, it's too expensive lining fabric, this one. We can't have that lining in that. We don't. Yes, but on the other hand, we by using the same fabric for different products. According to functionality, we maybe avoid MOQ, which means that we have less to monitoring, and we can have that fabric over seasons, and we can see it could be lining next season as well. That is just an example of, because I think, and that is a criticism to our business ourselves, I think we have to be open-minded about, especially from the creative side. I feel that as a designer, you need to understand the whole picture. What is we really doing here? And what certain kind of products should have. We have a very, very good way of measuring sustainability nowadays, without talking about certification and rules. The lifespan of the product. Because, I mean, to be able to replace a zipper on a jacket, it takes just a little bit more effort. And I'm the generation of designers that they were sending out to the factories. Nowadays, it's more behind the screen. Charming in a way, but I see a problem here. Because by communicating with the manufacturer, they know what to do. Can we change that seam instead? We can earn some euros by maybe not overlooking that, but it's still technical R&D process. And I think a lot of brands push less attention because they're also pushing the suppliers, say, we pay that, and if you don't, that we change. So next season will be another. So I think I talked too long now, but anyway, I'm so excited. The thing is that we need to have a longer perspective within the business. I think that, and collaborate. I love that you say, and not really isolate it. It's the same with the distribution. If it's e-com or retail, it has to be idea of producing more garment in longer lifespan with higher creative mindset. We'll still have the same profit. I know that when designers start to talk about figures, you should be worried. But I learn it, I know it for sure, because it makes a difference. I need to take some water now.
Take some water, take a break. I'll come back to you. Thank you so much for that. Olli, I want to bring your perspective in. You are a wonderful new innovations company based out of Finland here. We actually have an interview with Olli in the issue of Scandinavian Mind that some of you may have taken a copy of. I know you're in this sort of R&D phase where you are. Maybe we need to explain what you do a little bit in terms of providing fibers and textiles. And maybe start there, and I'm going to ask you about how you're connecting with the fashion industry.
Yes, as being an innovation company for technologies and biomaterials, so one of the let's say the biggest industries at the moment that kind of we are in trouble is of course textile industry, and as we are talking today, and we have heard a lot of good speeches about the transformation that is ahead of us. Huge, I think it's a huge topic. It's great that we are talking about here. We also enable a solution provider, try to find a solution for also here the textile industry to improve the sustainability in the value chain and the production value chain, by creating technology solution, material solutions that the whole value chain would be more sustainable. One of our technologies is AutoCell technology. Happens to be maybe one of the most promising technology to reprocess and recycle chemically the very, very tough polycotton waste, for example, and because of this, there's quite a huge interest at the moment among textile industry brands, fashion industry brands, towards us as well. That and seems that everyone wants to have a solution. Everyone understands there's a need for change, but there's a very little solutions yet. And what my colleagues here just explained, also I understand totally the challenges that you have with the whole value chain. That consumers do not necessarily want to pay anymore for the sustainable clothing. Industry doesn't want to pay. They say nothing, no more, but still they want to have more sustainable solutions, and it just doesn't match.
Well, I'm sorry. How do you interact with the fashion industry? Are you at that phase now, or foresee that you will interact with the fashion? I'm curious about, because you will play a part in the value chain, and that's your ambition of your innovation.
Yeah, we are interacting with them, with a lot of, I would say they almost all there as well, because we are not too many we're luckily here in Finland, a strange situation that the small country here in north, and we have the biggest number of the novel innovations what comes to the man-made cellulosic fibers and spin-over kind of fibers. But so when we're interacting with them, that there's a huge interest, but there's a barrier. At the moment, no one knows who's going to pay for the change. Who's going to be in charge of that one, that it's really the whole value chain becomes sustainable. There are not technology solutions. No one is providing yet real industrial scale solutions for sustainable textile fibers. There are nice tries. We are one of them, coming a bit, behind others. But this is the situation at the moment. We are keen on to give the solution. We have the knowledge, the understanding how to actually make it, but it will need efforts, money, someone's support. Whoever wants to have that solution would need to stand out and say, okay.
Well, speaking about money, we have an investor here, and let's great pivot into what you talked about, Jessica, with kind of the power of what's happening in the investment space in terms of putting sustainability requirements on the investments. Could that be a driver for what's happening here? We see fashion brands want to do better. We see innovation in companies want to service the fashion industry, but it will require costs, so to speak, to develop these things.
Yes, although I think one of the key challenges, and to touch upon what you were speaking about, at the end of the day, from an investment perspective, we're looking for solutions that actually have the potential to have commercial traction within the sort of short to medium to long term, depending on the investor, right? But I mean, we made some investments in the circular economy space then, or reuse, recycle, back in 2016, and it felt like, okay, we're a little bit ahead, but this is coming, and we're in 2023, and it's not really come. So at the end of the day, I think what we want to see actually is the industry and the brands jumping on board and starting to use some of the solutions that some fantastic entrepreneurs are putting out on the market. But at some point they run out of time and they run out of money, and investors can't keep reinvesting unless they're actually sort of experiencing that commercial traction. And so it's fantastic to see, some of the larger brands, they have so many innovation labs and initiatives, and they have all these projects in their sustainability report. But the question is scale, and at what point can they take things to scale? And I think at the same time, there needs to be a fundamental shift in how they think about business models. And I love what you said about the life cycle of the product and how it can be reused and recycled. And so the brands also need to adapt how they think about the return on a product on that time scale as well. At the moment, they put something on the shelf, they get paid for it. And everything that happens after that, they are giving away, essentially, to sort of the second-hand market. Now, if they start to think about how much they invest in a product over the life cycle of that product and actually understand, okay, what is the revenue potential of an item if it's circulated 1, 2, 3 times or recycled in different ways, then the business case is actually there, but they need to change the timeline and the horizon for how they look at that garment. And that's another shift that needs to happen also, not just on the products itself, but on sort of the expectations from a business case perspective.
Elin, I know, as you mentioned, Brixton is, like many brands active in the Nordic market, sort of the small to medium-sized brands growing organically. I don't think you've taken in major funding. Do you think that will be inevitable? I don't want you to disclose anything you can't, but at some point to take further steps, so to spek, in this direction.
Investors.
Yes.
Don't do it.
Well, I have to say the management and the owners of Brixton Textiles are very transparent with their staff. So we discuss everything from this to what paper we're going to have, everything. So, and right now, we're still not interested really in taking in investors, because many of the times when a fashion brand takes in investors, they lose control of the final product, because then the investors, with all their rights, put a demand on the brand and to increase the margins, to increase the profits, and it has to go fast. This could affect, especially a smaller brand like we are, because the leverage that we have towards our suppliers isn't as heavy as it is for the bigger companies. So it takes time for us. We take it step by step because, as I said, we're an outerwear brand as well. So the durability of the fabrics, our products are made to last season over season. We are not really that trendy in that way because we want them to be timeless and we want them to have a long lifespan. So, and using recycled fibers, most of the time, they're not as durable. They're coming there, but still not as durable as conventional polyester, conventional cotton, or virgin wool, because the fibers are shorter. So in this sense, we cannot stress the products and profits. So I think that's one of the main reasons why we haven't brought in any investors.
But Thomas, from the perspective of being a designer, how much power do you feel like you have? Because it feels like you are, in a way, closest to the garments. You're closest to creating these innovations, sourcing newer materials, better materials, so to speak. But then you have to motivate the cost of each sort of piece of the garment. You know, not to, you can mention names if you want to, but from a broad, you've worked with so many different brands. What's the kind of level of power that you feel like you have?
I wish it was higher, but I'm still improved. But in fact, of course, I take it seriously, and I think it's important. Sorry, watch. Anything, it's that I believe it's important from a brand, even if, I mean, I'm working with fashion brands and outdoor brands, and they have different perspectives. Fjällräven, if they do new product, they have a design brief. We start the product development 2 years before it actually meets with testing, evaluating. But in a fashion context, it's more of a look, a color, a silhouette, shorter time. But in the end of the day, it's about, I believe as a designer, you need, I mean, we talk about the fabric, the supply, everything. But another thing no one talks much about, how do we really, all the things we manufacture without really knowing, the leftovers in the stock, wherever it is, go to a factory nowadays to see, they can show you a lot of colors, less commercial, that someone ordered and hopefully should be sellable. So, I mean, there are ways of what we actually use and also how evaluate. And I think it's interesting in the creative process. That's what I want to highlight. Besides, I see it as industrial aspect of sustainability, and that is logistically planning, etc. And then it's creative part. I mean, compared to the music industry, for example, back in the days before Spotify, there was a band playing guitar. Hopefully, he could write a song or her, and they went to studio, release a record, tour. Then there came the revolution in music with the DJs come and they come doing all kind of mixes and they become bigger than the actual artists. And I think nowadays we have stylists, influencers, and I can see a lot of interesting collaborations there. We bring in them into the brand, and the brand has to be more open-minded maybe, and to see, to together make the impact to the consumer and make the appetite to consume. I think in that way we can declare the relevance for sustainability, and maybe not, and that's makes me a little bit sad sometimes, that we apply a way of guilt in feeling of consuming. Because, I mean, we like to do that. And I can tell you from working in the menswear shop where I started back in the days, I can prove that, I know it works. The vanity, the idea of seeing a young man coming in or whatever it is in the shop and feeling insecure, either his wife, girlfriend or whatever pushed him there, and then makes him feel like, okay, I'm maybe get light tonight, going home and see that. Then we can add something. And I think that by using this creativity, and also I can imagine from a brand perspective, let's say that you create a collection and we commit ourselves. In 3 seasons from now, we will come back in some way, we'll be pimping up that garment with you. Let's say, do something. Either with the collaboration, influence. So I mean, there are ways, and I think a lot of brands, and not even brands within the supply chain, we hold the cards very close to the body. No one wants what to show, what to do. You should, as I said, the initiative you talk about, maybe share. I mean, I've been working for some years with the dope dye, solution dye technology, which I worked with back in the days, which means less water use, and they have a fantastic color fastness. And fantastic. One problem is that it's high MQ, even if improved. But by, for example, replacing black lining in some of the big brands, just replacing the black lining, millions of meters can be done, easy. But then something, oh no, yes, but we need this weight, we need this, then year, yarn count. Come on, it's not that many care about that. I mean, there are other things to do. So there has to be a way of being more pragmatic, make the difference where it's easy to make the difference, and use the creativity to communicate that and make it relevant.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and you talked about that as well. And we've talked previously here on the panel the need for more transparency in the fashion industries. It feels like it's an industry that has a tradition of keeping everything close. Do we think it's so unique and everything is proprietary and so forth? Do you think we need more collaboration between actual fashion brands, like on the same level?
Definitely. We talked about this yesterday. It's the fashion industry has always been so secretive and classified. And to some point, I understand that, of course. But today, if we're gonna follow this new path, which the EU is forcing us to do as well, which is a good thing. We welcome this change, but in order for us to reach that goal, we need to start collaborate. If it's placing fabric orders together to reach those high MOQs, or sharing knowledge and information regarding, oh, this supplier is really dependable, or new collaborations with new fabric suppliers who can, for instance, keep stock of fabrics. Then we can reach the higher MOQs. But also collaborations with other industries to help us understand what we can do together. So yeah, I think more transparency, and I think we will see a lot more transparency really soon. We're working on it right now.
Thomas, do you want to add to that? Or?
Yeah, I think another important perspective is that when we talk about raising prices and the challenging with the supply chain, I think, for example, we're talking about Europe now, and I'm doing a project now with 2 suppliers in Italy, Portugal, and the idea there is to start. I mean, if the good things with manufacturing in EU is it's a flexible volume, etc., and on a high standard on sustainability. It's expensive though, so that means competitive. But if you go to some of these companies, a lot of them doing quite well now in Europe, even if they're struggling with the prices as well, because power, etc., is much more expensive. But just by start to talk with that and say, if most of these factories around Europe are owned by families still, so they've been around for a while, they have seen crisis before. So by just start to talking, what do they say? If they build the confidence, the idea of as a small brand, that you have an idea that you can declare it and say, we will do this together over season, a long-term collaborations built on trust, that we do that. Then instead of going as a small brand to an investor, say, I want to start a fashion brand. Okay, I've heard about that before. And going, and a lot of expensive costs because you're doing a lot of things and you negotiate with different suppliers and someone have that one and you ended up you don't know what to do. And in the end of the bottom line, you don't earn money, it just costs money. Because you are focusing on the product, the image, the concept, but less on the actual supply chain and how to do that. How can I integrate that in my brand culture as a designer? And of course, depending on where you aim and if you want to be on high premium level, volume, whatever it is. But I think by doing that, building trust in the supply chain, because what they are afraid of, investing in things, startup, and doing a lot of things for one season, and then the brand take the whole concept and do it in Asia. So they just investing in the startup process, and then So, I mean, there are a lot of things, again, when it comes to, I think it's, in the end of the day, it's less complicated than we do. But we need to really declare what is the problem, the challenging part in the whole chain. And I don't believe it. I think the consumer can pay more according to sustainability. It should be sustainable. But in the end of the day, the business model traditionally is, I don't think we can talk, I mean, something costs 100, the consumer pays 700, 800, 900. I mean, if we should stretch that more, that's not the way to go.
No. I think business model is a whole different panel. We can't get into that.
Yeah, don't design into that one.
Olli, I want to end with you. When you move from this R&D phase and going into more commercial product, what types of collaborations are you looking for in the industry? What types of connections, or maybe what types of knowledge are you seeking from the fashion industry in order to succeed with your product?
It's a good question. Yeah, it's a whole value chain thinking about it, that the end users and then the producers of the raw material, everything in between. So looking to have a dialogue with, first of all, the technology providers as well, the ones that will enable the scaling up the technologies that we eventually will develop, and then to understand also the whole holistic, let's say, view on what is really needed there, as we have discussed this as well, that it's really sustainable, that we are not, again saying this, that we are not coming up with one solution and then creating a 2 or dozen new problems there. But this collaboration between designers, brands, investors, technology providers, companies and so on, we just need more dialogues. Konrad, we need more this kind of a conference and this kind of things here. We need to open more this topic and I think involve the audience as well there, as a consumers and players in this industry. We all need it to solve this problem.
I think that's a great way to end this panel. Jessica, Elin, Olli, and Thomas, a round of applause. Thank you so much.